Hey everybody, welcome back to Good Shepherd Lutheran Church. As always, glad you could be with me this week. And I will be using the text from the lectionary for Wednesday, July 22nd. And this is actually a day when they lift up and honor Mary Magdalene. And so I'll be reading the Easter text from John. Specifically, it talks about Mary Magdalene, and that's verses 1 to 2 and 11 to 18 in John chapter 20. So let us hear that text first. Early on the first day of the week, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene came to the tomb and saw that the stone had been removed from the tomb. So she ran and went to Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one whom Jesus loved, and said to them, "They have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we do not know where they have laid him." But Mary stood weeping outside the tomb, and as she wept, she bent over to look into the tomb and saw two angels in white sitting where the body of Jesus had been laying, one at the head and the other at the feet. They said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping?" She said to them, "They have taken away my Lord, and I do not know where they have laid him." When she had said this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing there, but she did not know it was Jesus. Jesus said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping? Whom are you looking for?" Supposing him to be the gardener, she said to him, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have laid him, and I will take him away." Jesus said to her, "Mary." She turned and said to him in Hebrew, "Rabboni," which means teacher. Jesus said to her, "Do not hold on to me, because I have not yet ascended to my Father. But go to my brothers and say to them, I am ascending to my Father and to your Father, to my God and your God." Mary Magdalene went and announced to the disciples, "I have seen the Lord." And she told them that he had said these things to her. Here ends our reading. See, John's gospel is noteworthy for the confident and triumphant demeanor of the central character. See, in John, Jesus is a victor. He's not a victim. But the evangelist cannot avoid the historical fact that Jesus was crucified and buried. And even in John's triumphal gospel, there is a period of despair in the midst of this, an interlude of darkness, so to speak. The structure in this text is actually pretty clear and twofold. First part is Mary Magdalene, and then later Simon Peter and the beloved disciple, which we didn't read today, gather at the empty tomb. And then the second part is Jesus outside the tomb with Mary, revealing himself. See, all three of the disciples see the empty tomb, but Mary's the one who hangs around long enough to eventually meet the risen Lord. The timing of this encounter is significant, because in John it says, "while it was still dark." See, this is a minor discrepancy between John and the rest of the Synoptic Gospels. Still dark versus at dawn, pointing to a symbolic difference. See, in the Synoptic Gospels, the women hear this angelic announcement of the resurrection. So light's important. But in John, at first, Mary only finds an empty tomb, and so darkness is appropriate. Later, the visit occurs in twilight, which is a term that is sort of an intermediate state, either between nighttime and sunrise or between sunset and nighttime. Symbolically, the light of Jesus seems to have gone out, as it appears to be a twilight preceding darkness night. In fact, it is a twilight preceding a new sunrise, telling us that dawn is imminent. At first, Mary does not even know that Jesus stands before her later in the gospel lesson that we heard. Scholars call this the non-recognition motif, saying that the disciples have an inability to recognize Jesus in his glorified state. Alternatively, more ordinary reasons could account for Mary not recognizing Jesus, whether it be emotional distress or tears in her eyes or the fact of the darkness. But I'm in favor of the former theological motive, and that makes the calling of Mary by name even more significant. Jesus tells her, "Mary, do not hold on to me." And see, the Greek implies stop doing what you're doing, and varied explanations have tried to explain Jesus' words here, yet Jesus very simply explains it himself. She cannot hold on to him because he must ascend to the Father. His words imply an action that is in progress and is not yet complete. John seems to understand the ascension will be occurring shortly after Jesus' appearance to Mary. Later appearances might have been made from heaven. Jesus' final words, though, in the scene has perplexed interpreters for millennia. To my Father and to your Father, to my God and your God. Some have thought that Jesus' words here were meant to differentiate between Jesus' relationship with God and the disciples and our relationship with God. But it may, however, be a statement of identification, not so much a difference. In other words, Jesus' departure to the Father and in the sending of the Holy Spirit will enable his disciples and us to have a familiar relationship with God as Jesus does. See, the thing is for over a millennia, Mary of Magdala was identified as the woman with the alabaster jar who was called a sinner and who washed Jesus' feet with her tears and dried them with her hair. And while we may never know for certain if those two women were the same or separate individuals, this somehow, for some reason, has confused Christianity's view of them. Either way, Jesus shows these women in the gospel nothing but respect and forgiveness and love. But what we do know about Mary Magdalene is that she was the woman who was one of the closest people to Jesus. She was possessed by 7 demons, and Jesus heals her. She's mentioned in the resurrection accounts by all 4 Gospels, sometimes alone, and sometimes in the gathering of other women. And she is the first to meet the risen Christ. The fact that she immediately went to embrace him in this testament is to the closeness of their relationship, the mutual regard and affection that they must have shared. When Jesus says to her, "Do not cling to me," he's indicating that it is time for the physical closeness to be in the past. Mary's love had to release the infinite in order to reach the expansive and spiritual dimension. See, Mary Magdalene is a person in the gospel who needs love to be stronger than death. And so she is the first to know it and perhaps recognizes it at the deepest level. She is the first one who symbolically comes to consciousness, so to speak, as it were, of Jesus as risen, and thus is a clear witness to all the other witnesses. She's the real knower. In fact, love and knowing have become one in her. Mary is the name for all those who have been led by love into an awareness of their true selves and know its source in God. Mary Magdalene is nothing short than an icon of love itself. Love needed, love given, love received, and love that's passed on. She is a stand-in for all of us who seek an intimate and loving relationship with the divine. Jesus' appearance to her and alone first is a clear affirmation of the wonderful and astounding message that we do not need to be perfect to be the beloved of Jesus and of God. And for that, we give thanks today. Well, that's what I got for you this week, everybody. Hope you enjoyed it. Please feel free to join me next week. And until then, take care of yourselves and each other.